Okay, folks. So if you have no questions, what we'll do is talk a little bit more deeply about student success in the course. Okay. So what I'll do is share my screen again. And one more time, bring up that section of the syllabus that talks about student success. So let me do the following. I want to show you how you get access to tutoring services at HACC. Okay, so right now you should see the HACC website up on the screen. And so I want to encourage you, let me see if I can bolster this web page a little bit bigger here. Okay, so up here in the top center is a button called Learning Commons. I'm going to click on that. If I click on Learning Commons, what you're going to notice is we have several pieces of information here. Okay, sorry, sometimes technology is not so wonderful here. Okay, here we go. So notice you have access to library services here, testing services here, tutoring services here, and user support services here. This is all under the Learning Commons tab at the main HACC web page. User support would be for technical support. So if you're having a computer issue, if you're having a Wi-Fi issue, if you're having an internet connectivity issue, you can reach out to our support people and they will try to help troubleshoot your problem. And in some cases, HACC is able to provide temporary hardware for you, such as improved Wi-Fi routers and things like that to improve your internet connection. So we can offer those kinds of features for you if you're struggling with internet connections, okay? So please be aware of the user support information. This telephone number can be very helpful. 717-780-2570 is our technology support, okay? All right, tutoring. Okay, here's the tutoring column, right? There are tutors available, so we can go to current schedules, and I'm going to let you walk through this, but in this page, you will see, information about remote tutoring. We have tutoring appointments you can create, and there's also drop-in tutoring. So please be aware that tutoring is available. The purpose of a tutor would be to help you to understand a topic in the course. So let's say, for example, we're talking about osmosis, and you just are having a hard time understanding osmosis. Well, you could go to a tutor and say, hey, could you please help me understand osmosis? I'm not really getting the main idea. That's what a tutor would do for you, is help explain a topic in the course. We also, in addition to tutoring, have academic coaches. An academic coach is a person that does not teach you the content. They're not going to teach you what osmosis is, but an academic coach is going to help you organize yourself so that you more effectively study. So you note it says here on the web page, academic coaching helps with time management, organization, developing confidence, transitioning to college. If this is your first college course ever or in a long time, it can be, intimidating at times. One thing I like to highlight is test taking strategies, right? A lot of times students know the content better than their exam scores suggest. And the reason for that is because you may not be the best at taking an exam, okay? So an academic coach will help you become a better studier. They will help you become better at taking exams, but they won't teach you the course content, Okay. So I want you to just be aware of that Hack offers tutors to explain course content and academic coaches to learn how to study more effectively. Okay. All right. Do you have any questions about that? So one more time, if you're in the Hack webpage, hack.edu, you go to Learning Commons, and you get access to all these important services that might be helpful to you, okay? All right. So let's get started with WileyPlus next, okay? So I'm gonna, let's see here. I'm gonna stick with what I have, and let's get started with WileyPlus. Okay. Now I noticed that many of you were able to register and get online with WileyPlus. That's fantastic. Okay. And let me say ahead of time, I had set out information through email about going into D2L and getting some red shelf access link. Please note that that in fact was wrong information, and I apologize. I was told incorrect information from my campus bookstore, and then I communicated that incorrect information to you. You do not need a registration code through D2L. You do not need one through D2L. You should be able to access all the WileyPlus content you need simply by creating an account with WileyPlus and moving forward. Okay, so WileyPlus is the course learning environment that we have for the course, and this is how you're going to access your textbook. So I'm going to go in to WileyPlus into your section of WileyPlus for your course. Please note that you're going to have a lecture portion for WileyPlus, and you're going to have an additional and separate laboratory portion of WileyPlus. Okay, so when you log into WileyPlus, there should be two modules that you have access to: lecture and lab. Okay, and so the view that you see on the screen right now, and excuse me, I'm going to change my viewing option here a little bit. Okay, because I'm trying to manage my screen real estate. Okay, so I'm going to go to the student view at this time. And so my view should look very much like your view. So let me ask you a question in the chat window. Okay. Have you been able to create an account with WileyPlus? Okay. All right. All right. It sounds like many people are saying yes, and that's very encouraging. Okay. And so please know that if you have not yet created an account with WileyPlus, you would in fact use the following documents that I sent out earlier in the week, right? This had the registration codes, the one I'm showing you right now for lecture. This is the course ID on WileyPlus for lecture, A00215. And this is the WileyPlus course ID for lab, A00128. So it sounds like most of you have had success with that. If you have not created a WileyPlus account yet, and you have any trouble doing so in the next day, please reach out to me either through email or come and see me during office hours, and I'll help get you set up. Okay. All right. So this is what WileyPlus looks like. And so if you're seeing this kind of thing on your personal computer screen, you are at the right space. Okay, you are at the right space. So right now I am in the lecture portion of WileyPlus. And so I want to go through a couple things with you right now. First off, you might have played with this on your own time this week and figured some things out, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted you to do. But just to be sure we're on the same page, how do you access your textbook? You go to Wiley Course Resources. So let's do that. On the count of three, I'm going to click Wiley Course Resources. 1, 2, 3, click. Okay. Now that opened the window for course resources. And notice the first thing in the top left corner is the WileyPlus e-textbook. So let's click launch on that. 1, 2, 3, click launch. Oh dear, that's not encouraging, is it? Okay. I just got a computer error there. Let me ask you in the chat window. Are you able to access your electronic textbook at home? Okay, so you have better success than I had. Good, good. All right, so let me see if I can back out of the student environment here and see if I can access this as an instructor, because I should be able to do that. All right, so I'm going to try once again. Okay, that is much better. Okay, that's much better. So at this point, you can in fact see your textbook, right? And so there also, let's see here. It's been some time since I've done this, but as I recall, in the left side window, there was an icon for downloading the textbook to your personal device so that you could access the textbook offline. Okay. So let me ask you in the chat window. Have you figured out how to download and access your textbook offline? Okay, all right. So first off, obviously you don't have to access your textbook offline. As long as you have an internet connection, you're good to go. And that's totally cool if that's how you want to do things. There's nothing wrong with that. That's quite okay. But what I'm going to suggest to you is that, with your textbook loaded up, that you look around a little bit. And I don't think my version of the software is currently showing it, because I've already done it, where I've already downloaded the textbook. But please know that there should be a way for you to download a copy of the textbook to your personal device so that you can access the book without an internet connection. If you would like to do that, that should be possible. Okay. And so I'm sorry I can't show you right now, but I know it's possible. Okay. So, all right. So it sounds like most of you have been able to successfully load your textbook. And again, it's going to take a while for you to get used to things, right? But you should be able to, take notes and highlight things. And, I just highlighted that, and I could say, okay, create a flashcard. Okay. Flashcard 1 on osmosis. Obviously, that's not it, but you can make flashcards, that kind of thing. You can bookmark, all this sort of thing with the digital textbook. It's going to take a while for you to get comfortable with this, but I want you to be aware that these features actually exist, okay? Okay, so, wrestle with this over the next day or two. And if you're still struggling to access content, let me know so we can go in a private session and I can walk you through some things, okay? All right. Now, there's a number of things in addition to your textbook. For example, we have course-wide resources. There's all of these, like audio glossary. There's a lot of big words in A&P. Sometimes you don't know how to read them. Sometimes you don't know how to say them, right? So you can click audio glossary and, let's just take acetylcholinesterase. Pick anything on your computer you want to talk about. Okay, and hit the play button.
Acetylcholinesterase.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that the software can actually help you learn how to say these terms, to pronounce these terms properly if you're ever confused about things, okay? Like, I don't know, let's try this one, adrenocorticotropic hormone.
Adrenocorticotropic hormone.
There you go, okay? So all kinds of fancy words, okay, to learn. So the point is that there's lots of support resources here for you. I won't necessarily assign any of these things, but please do a survey of these things as you're getting introduced to the course materials over this week, so that you get comfortable with things. So I'll let you play with this stuff, okay, during your own private study time. The goal here is for you to identify things that you find as personally helpful to you during your study time, and for other things that you don't find personally helpful, well, then just ignore it. Don't use it. You don't have to waste your time on things that are not helpful, okay? But as we continue here, I'll go down to chapter 3. There are things where, you might have concept maps. For example, the human cell. So let me just click on this as an example. This is an interactive activity. Okay, so hopefully it loads up okay. All right, and the idea here is that you want to take these terms, right, and drag them over to the appropriate window of the flow chart so that the flow chart makes logical sense. So this is an interactive way to try to learn content. Okay, so the human cell has a boundary of the cell membrane, and then you fill this stuff in. The human cell contains organelles. The human cell is filled with, well, you might be aware of the cytosol, so I drag that over here and things like that. Fill this chart in and then submit it and see if your answers are correct or not. So it just for, these interactive activities provide an additional way for you to wrestle with content rather than your standard read, take notes, read, take notes. I mean, that's important, but sometimes you get a little bored with it, right? So doing these interactive activities can be another useful way to learn content and spice things up a little bit during your private study time, okay? So be aware of the interactive activities, be aware of the audio glossary, any of these things that you have access to in your course resources area, use them. If you find them beneficial, use them. If you don't find them beneficial, well, then don't use them. It's really that simple, okay? All right, so so those are your course resources. Do you have any questions at this moment? Okay, I want to continue. All right, I'm going to go back to the main web page here, the main starting point for the WileyPlus. Notice that what's listed are these assignments. Now, these assignments, learning to navigate WileyPlus, Chapter 1 concept checked assessments. Please understand me. These assignments, as currently listed on the computer screen, which are part of the lecture portion of WileyPlus, are assignments that are not required. You don't have to do them. You don't have to do them. But I want to encourage you to do them because they can help you understand whether you understand something or not. Okay. So learning to navigate WileyPlus is going to teach you how to use the website better. Chapter 1 concept check assessment. Now let me click on this. When you're studying Chapter 1 content, you might want to know, well, do I really understand what the chapter is telling me? So you open this up, right? And you start going through questions. So for example, Chapter 1 concept check question 1. All right. In order to improve a patient's blank, a respiratory therapist would be interested in studying the functions of the individual's blank. So obviously the idea here is you would select a choice and continue forward. This is basically a miniature quiz that lets you know whether you're picking up on the right ideas of the chapter you've been assigned to read. And also take note that during the questions, there's a link to the e-textbook. So the e-textbook should pop up information about these structures that then you can read about to answer the question if you couldn't answer it from your own body of knowledge in your head. Okay. So be aware of those things. Once again, these questions from WileyPlus and lecture are not required, but I want to encourage you to use them because you might in fact find real value in them. Okay. All right. So I see the time is 9:16, so we are due for a break. Okay. We still have lots to do this morning, so it's really nice that we have some lab time. So let's do this. Let's take a 15-minute break. I have 9:16 on my clock. Let's start back at 9:32. Take a nice break for yourself. Come back at 9:32 and we'll continue the conversation, okay? Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a chance to get a little refreshment, take a little break there. Okay, so let's continue our conversation here. You know, probably after this morning, you're going to be feeling like, oh, all this stuff, right? I mean, it's just an overload of information the first day, but it'll get better. I promise it will get better. So let me continue to share my screen with you. Okay. So one more time, we're looking at the lecture portion of WileyPlus. You know, I've shown you the Wiley course resources, which includes your Wiley textbook and a variety of other things that you can kind of play with during your study time this week, just to get an idea of what's available, okay? It will be necessary for you to explore this on your own so that you can discover things that you will find helpful, and you can determine things that really you don't want to use because they're not helpful, okay? So back on the main WileyPlus site here, we were talking about assignments, and I said that these assignments, these concept check assessments, they are not required. You do not have to do them for the course, but I would encourage you to do them, make them part of your study time, particularly before an exam, because they can help you to understand and realize whether you understand the content or not. Okay, so another very important tab will be Pages, P-A-G-E-S. Let's go to Pages. Okay, in Pages, you're going to find a couple links here. The first link is links to lecture recordings. So, you know, there are no lecture recordings yet, but if I click on that, what I will do is I will put hyperlinks to the lecture recordings while we are remote, and so that you can go back and review things if you want to, or if you think you've missed something, The lecture recording links will be here underneath the Pages tab. Additionally, I also have links for Zoom. So your lecture and lab Zoom link, you're already online with me right now. But let's say you forgot. We'll log into WileyPlus. So this is your lecture and lab Zoom link. There's an alternative Zoom link for office hours that you have to use. So they are available under the Pages tab. I also have an access link to Visible Body, which I'll show you in just a moment when I go to the laboratory portion of our conversation, okay? So be aware of those links in the Pages tab. Also, under the Files tab, okay, you're not going to see all the files right now that I'm showing you because some of the things I'm restricting, okay, some of the things I'm restricting. But let me ask you this. Go to the Files tab in WileyPlus, okay? And I'm going to put a question in the chat window. Do you see your syllabus in the Files tab of WileyPlus? Do you see it? Okay, good. Very good. All right, so now you know where to get files. You know, you can see from looking at my screen right now that I already have other files up there like study guides for exams and stuff, right? Those things I'm restricting access to right now until we get closer to the appropriate exam times. But as we get closer, these files will open up for you and you will have access to them when you need them, okay? All right. So we've done just about everything we need to do on this part. So you know how to get files, you know how to get hyperlinks through Pages, you know how to get assignments, you know how to get your textbook. Okay, there is a discussion tab in WileyPlus. If you want to create a discussion about a topic in the textbook that you're struggling with, feel free to do that. And the idea here is that anyone in the course, including myself, can come in and try to help answer questions, okay? So, you know, just as an example, I put this discussion in. What biology and A&P content questions do you have? This is an area where you as a community of students can post questions and try to get help from each other. I mean, that seems like a valuable thing, okay? So feel free to use that. I will, you know, every other day or so, I'll pop into the discussion area and see if anybody's posted a question. And if there's some help that I can provide, I will do that. Okay. Do you have any questions right now? Okay. So one of the things I cannot emphasize enough is that when you're studying for this course, the manner in which you need to prepare for exams is this. You need to practice answering questions. That's the only way you know if you understand. So where are you going to get practice questions for exams to know if you're ready? Well, the first thing is under the lecture portion of WileyPlus, you have the concept checked assessments, right? Those are practice questions. Additionally, in the course textbook, okay, in the course textbook, which I'm going to show you here, all right, you're going to see a variety of questions. So as you glance at my screen, okay, as you glance at my screen, what I want to point out, let me get to okay. There are checkpoint questions here, right? Okay. There are checkpoint questions here. Those are questions that you can attempt to answer, okay? But I think even more importantly than checkpoint questions will be the following. Notice under figure 1.1 here, there's a red cube. And it says, which level of structural organization is composed of two or more different types of tissues that work together to perform a specific function? So this is a figure question, and you should be trying to answer it as you study. Now, let me say this. The figure questions in your textbook, like the one that I've highlighted on your screen right now, they are answered at the back of each chapter. They're answered at the back of each chapter. So, okay, so here's our first question. Which level of structural organization is composed of two or more different types of tissues that work together to perform a specific function? Let's go to the end of chapter 1 and see if we can find the answers to the figure questions. Okay, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, so we want to go to the end of chapter 1. Lots of stuff here, but you know, like anything, you take a little bit at a time. Okay, so here we're at the back of chapter 1, chapter review. And let's see, we should be able to find, here we go, the answers to the figure questions, right? The answers to the figure questions are at the back of the chapters. So the question we asked was about, you know, the level of structure defined by two or more tissues that work together to serve a common function. So the answer to that is organs, right? Organs are composed of two or more different types of tissues that work together to perform a specific function. So one more time in the chat window, the answers to figure questions are at the end of each chapter. So you should make answering these questions part of your study habits, part of your study time. Okay. Also, while we're here and while it's on the screen, do you see that there's also some critical thinking questions? Critical thinking questions are present at the end of each chapter, and they are answered at the back of the entire textbook. Okay, so hold on a second in the chat window. Critical thinking questions are answered at the back of the textbook. Okay, so let me just read the first one. Critical thinking question number 1. You are studying for your first anatomy and physiology exam and want to know which areas of your brain are working hardest as you study. Your classmates suggest that you could have a computed tomography scan done to assess your brain activity. Would this be the best way to determine brain activity levels? Why or why not? So let's see. I'm going to open up the table of contents. And I'm going to go down to the end of the textbook here. And it has here, critical thinking questions, page 1200. I'm accessing this in the table of contents. So I'm going to click on that. Hopefully it will take me there. No, that wasn't it. Sorry, wrong chapter. Okay, wrong chapter here. Appendix E, answer to critical thinking questions. So I'm going to hit Appendix E, E as in egg. There we go, answers to critical thinking questions. So Appendix E. I'm just typing into the chat window. Appendix C has the answers to critical thinking questions. Okay, so let's answer the first question. Okay, the first question was about whether computed tomography would be useful in determining, how intensely you're studying. And the answer is no. Computed tomography is used to look at differences in tissue density. To assess activity in an organ such as the brain, a positron emission tomography scan, PET scan, or a single photo emission computerized tomography scan would provide a colorized visual assessment of brain activity, okay? So don't worry about literally knowing the answer to that now, but the point is, where do you get practice questions? You get practice questions with the figure questions, you get practice questions with the critical thinking questions. They are answered in your textbook. And you also in WileyPlus have the course assessment questions that are useful during your preparation for an exam. Okay, so do you have any questions about how to access questions for study purposes? Okay, it might be the case that, as you get into things this week, questions will come up. That's a very natural thing. So don't feel like you're not going to have a chance to ask questions going forward. Of course you will. So start getting into it this week. Start looking through the resources, start wrestling with the resources, and write down questions you might have so that we can talk about them, okay? The point is that, in 2 weeks, you're all feeling very comfortable with the technology, and you can really focus on the biology of the course, because we don't want the technology to get in the way. We want the technology to be supportive so that you can learn the biology. That's really what we want, okay? All right, any questions? Okay, so if you don't have any questions about that, what we will do now is I'm going to switch into the laboratory portion of WileyPlus, okay? So I'm going to open up a new tab in my web browser. So I'm going to go to my dashboard here, okay? And I'm going to the lab portion of WileyPlus. I'm going to ask you, please go to the laboratory portion of WileyPlus on your computer. Please go to the laboratory portion of WileyPlus on your computer, okay? If you didn't know how I did that, well, what I did was I went to the course dashboard. I went to the dashboard under WileyPlus. I clicked on dashboard. That brings up the courses I have access to. You should have access to the lab portion if you've successfully registered for the lab portion. I'm going to click on that. And up comes the lab portion of WileyPlus. Okay, so question in the chat window. Are you currently in the lab portion of WileyPlus? Anybody need help right now? Okay, it seems like everybody's comfortable, and you know what? That just makes things a lot more easier that we can move forward. So thank you. Okay, so we're now in the lab portion of WileyPlus, and I will highlight some things you're used to. First off, files. Okay, there are some files that you should have access to right now. So, you can look at files. You don't have access to everything right now that I do, but there's some files present. Pages is also there. And again, you have Zoom and visible body links for class. Okay, we'll use that in just a few minutes. You have the discussion section, so you could put discussion items for lab if you wish. Okay. We have assignments, which I'll talk about in a moment, and we have Wiley course resources. The Wiley course resources for the lab portion of WileyPlus is going to be how you access your lab manual. So open up course resources under the, as you're inside the lab portion of WileyPlus. And for WileyPlus eTextbook, click Launch. I'm going to click Launch. 1, 2, 3. Click Launch. And if things are working correctly, you now see that I have up the laboratory manual for anatomy and physiology by Connie Allen and Valerie Harper. So let me ask you in the chat window. Are you able to load your lab manual? Can you do it? Awesome. All right, folks. We are 98% of the way to success at this point. Very good. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. So I'll leave you to play with the lab manual on your own time. Okay. Going back to WileyPlus. Again, I'm in the lab portion of WileyPlus. Okay. I'm going to go to the assignments link. Now, gang, the assignments in the lab portion of WileyPlus are the assignments that are listed in your class syllabus. So, for example, this page here in your syllabus, tentative lab schedule, this is the schedule that's in WileyPlus. In the lab portion of WileyPlus, this is the schedule. And these homework assignments are required for the course. You must do them. They are part of your class responsibility, okay? So you have 2 homework assignments that are due by 9:30 next Tuesday. And obviously the whole point here is that this week you start getting comfortable with this content. So let's take a look here. Lab exercise 1, activities. Lab exercise 1, reviewing your knowledge. Lab exercise 1, using your knowledge. And you can see the number of points that each assignment counts for. And you can see the due date, January 25th at 9:30 a.m. Okay, so you should have access to these assignments. So I'll just click on one, okay? I'm going to open it, okay? And you start doing the questions, okay? Yours might look a little different than mine because you're a student, I'm the instructor, right? But it's going to have things like this, diagrams where you start to need to match the term with the number here, right? And answer things, okay? And there are textbook links. The textbook's going to be for the lab manual. So you're going to work through these things, progressively over the week and do the assignments, okay? You get, for every question, you get 3 attempts. You get 3 attempts to get it correct before it's marked wrong. And that's intentional. I don't want homework to be damaging for you. I want it to be enriching for you. I want you to get something wrong, go back, figure it out, get it right, and get credit for it. So you can answer a question wrong 2 times, come back, answer it the 3rd time correctly, and still get credit for it. Okay, so you have 3 chances to answer the questions correctly before you would lose any points. Okay. All right. So, question in the chat window. do you see the lab exercise 1 and exercise 2 homework assignments in WileyPlus? Can you see what I'm talking about on your own personal screen? Okay, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Okay, any questions? All right. So let's think about what's going on here, right? We're getting the semester started. You now know how to access the digital version of your textbook. You now know how to access the digital version of your lab manual. You also see what your lab homework assignments are for the week, and that these should be completed by next Tuesday. Okay. All right. So if I go back to the main page here, okay, we're getting close to being able to start some legitimate lab activity stuff at this time. So let me just open the floor. Anything in the syllabus, anything in WileyPlus we've been talking about that you would like to throw out a question on? Okay, so hopefully the lack of questions means that you're succeeding. I hope so. And again, if there are things that come up this week, write them down, shoot me an email, come to see me during office hours, pose the question during class. That's quite okay. All right. So at this time, I'm just going to start moving into some lab ideas at this point. Now, I did say that normally I will not record lab, and that's true. I'm not going to record lab. But right now, because we're getting some very important details started, I will continue to record this content for the benefit of anybody that might want to review it later on. Starting next week, I don't expect that I would record any lab content, okay? So, first things first, okay? In lab, we are going to focus on anatomy. And the first content that we need you to develop a deep, mature comfort level with is the bones of the skeleton and the features of those bones. And so first things first, okay? In the lab portion of WileyPlus, please go to your Files tab and please access the file that says T. Allen Biology 121, Bones for Lab Exam 1. Bones for Lab Exam 1. Click that open on your computer screen. You should get a document that looks like what's coming up here. Okay, so just give me a second for this to load. Okay. All right, so a question in the chat window. Do you see the Lab Practical 1 word bank on your computer? Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, so gang, here's the deal. This document that's now loaded on your device is your word bank of anatomy structures that you must master for the first lab exam. These terms represent the structures that you have to be capable of identifying. Okay, so you can see there's 5 pages of content. There's a lot of content here. And there's there's nothing like getting dropped off the deep end of the swimming pool, right? So there's a lot of content here that you need to know. And so Cassandra's asking, is this printable? It is, Cassandra, if you download it. Do you see a download link at the top? So I would encourage anybody that wants to, I would encourage all of you to download this document, store it on your hard drive of your device. And if you have access to a printer, I encourage you to print it, because printing it and having the paper with the words on will be 100% better than trying to look at this on the screen all the time. Okay. So I encourage you to download and print word banks. It will make life easier for you if you do that. Speaking of which, this reminds me of something. It seems likely that some of you might get into the semester and you'll be reading your textbook online, and you might get to a point where you say, you know what? I kind of realize I don't like reading a book on a computer. I would rather read the book like physical book. Well, let me tell you this. The Hack Bookstore does stock some loose leaf versions of both the textbook and lab manual that are at a reduced cost. I mean, they're about $35 a book. So if you would prefer to have a printed physical copy of the textbook and or lab manual, please go to the Hack Bookstore website, because you can get a physical book if you prefer to read a physical book rather than read it off your computer screen. That is available for about $35 a book, okay? All right, so I've now shown you this document, and as I've mentioned, this is the list of words whose anatomy you must be capable of identifying, and you will be tested on them on February 15th. On February 15th, you will be tested on your ability to identify these terms, okay? So how are you going to learn these things? Well, through a lot of hard work is the honest answer, right? That's how you're going to learn these things. 15, 20 years ago, you would have plastic models of skeletons and plastic models of muscles and things like that that you would wrestle with. And that's how medical students learned anatomy for a long, long time, because that's all that was available. But honestly, we can do better now with computer technology. We can do better than plastic models that sometimes break and get disorganized and things like this. So now I'm going to show you how to access your visible body software, okay? So any questions before I leave this page? Okay, so I'm going to close this document up, and I'm going to go back to the Pages tab in WileyPlus. So go to the Pages tab in WileyPlus. Okay. You should see it, an entry that says Zoom and Visible Body Links for Class. I'm going to click on that. Go ahead and click on that. And you notice you have a visible body link. But before you click on it, are you logged into your MyHack account? You've got to be logged into MyHack to access Visible Body. So please, if you're not logged into MyHack, please do so at this time. Please log into MyHack now, okay? And I'm just going to wait for a few seconds for you to do that. Okay, I'm just going to wait for a few seconds for you to do that. I'm going to ask for your feedback in the chat window. Are you logged into MyHack? Okay. I'm just going to wait a few seconds because I don't want to go so fast that I lose you, okay? Okay. So as you log into my hack, go ahead and click the visible body link. That's going to open a tab in your web browser. Nope, I'm already signed out. Okay. All right, so before you do anything, folks, you should have a page that looks like this. Human Anatomy Atlas 2021, version 2021.2. This is a digital, virtual, electronic atlas of the human body. Before you launch the atlas, I want you to take note, mobile apps. If your subscription includes mobile access, this mobile apps page provides a version of the app you can download to your Android, iPhone, or iPad. Folks, our license at Hack does include mobile access. So you can download this to your tablet. You could download it to your cell phone. I don't advise that because learning anatomy on a little screen is not a good way to go. But you can access this on your cell phone or your tablet, hopefully more so on your tablet if you want, okay? So I just wanted you to be aware that you can download it to your tablet and study with it while you're at the dentist's office, okay? There you go. So let's continue. So go ahead and launch Human Anatomy Atlas. It might take a few seconds to start up. Because there's a lot of information that has to get passed back and forth. And depending on your internet access, it might go a little bit slow or a little bit fast, depending on how good your internet connection is. Okay, so let me just ask this. Is visible body running on your computer right now? Okay. All right, so I'm just going to wait a little bit because for me to go further and lose people just isn't helpful. So I'm going to wait a bit till I get a few more yeses of people telling me it's running on their computer. Okay. So folks, this is the software that you have access to because you are a Hack student. Okay, you don't own this software, but you have the right to use it because you've registered for this course. And you can use this, you can use this all semester long. You can use it in AMP2 as well. Okay. All right. Let me just ask, is anybody having a problem that we should talk about before I go any further? Okay, folks, this is the software that you want to sleep with at night. You want to tuck it on your pillow and make sure that information from the software is oozing into your brain. Okay, this is it. This is how we're going to learn the anatomy. So a couple things. You'll notice up here, the thing that's highlighted blue is views. This software does have media, where, you can play with this during your time. Tell you what, let's take a look at this sutures video. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Sutures are non-moving joints that connect bones of the skull. These joints have serrated edges that lock together with fibers of connective tissue. The interlocking edges make sutures strong and fracture resistant. All skull joints are sutures, except for the joint connecting the mandible to the temporal bone, which is a moving
Okay, so that went fast, but you can look at that again during your own private study time. The point is that there is media relevant for the content that you're going to be asked to learn. There are also some pre-organized quizzes. Some of them will be more or less helpful because they're not customized for our course, but there are some quizzes that can be helpful. And then there is a section called My Library, where after you create a visible body account, you can annotate your own images and save your images to the cloud, and you can study that way. I'll show you more about that later, okay? So let's go back to views. Underneath views, there's these subheadings. You have regions, which look like this. You have systems, which is what you were presented with when it started. You have gross anatomy lab. You have cross sections of anatomy. You have microanatomy, you're going to have to know the bones, right? So here's a cross section of the femur, right? So I'm going to go back to where I was. And there are muscle actions. This isn't helpful for us now, but for exam 2, this will be very helpful where, I'll just show you one here. Where the software is going to animate the motion of the skeleton based on the contraction and relaxation of the muscle fibers. Okay? Right now, we're just taking a tour. I certainly don't expect that you know all this stuff yet. I don't. Okay? So I'm going to go back and to tell you that where we're going to start is going to be views, systems. So please go to views and systems so that your computer looks like my computer. Okay. If at any moment during this tour, you get lost or you have a computer issue, please speak up. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose anybody, okay? So if something's not right, please speak up. All right, so the first thing I need to show you is how do you use the software to learn content. And this will be a multi-week process where you learn how to use the software. But we're going to start with some simple things today to get you started, and we'll get more sophisticated through the semester, okay? So one of the things that you have to know from the word bank, right? So I've downloaded and printed out my word bank, is you have to learn some of the bones of the skull. So let's take number 2, view number 2, the skull. So highlight and click on number 2, skull. Okay. So you should have an ominous looking skull staring at you right now on your computer screen, okay? Let's talk about the basic controls of the software. If you have a standard mouse with a left mouse button, you should be able to click on the left mouse button and hold it to rotate the skull around. So here, go ahead and try to rotate the skull around, clicking on the left mouse button of your computer, the left mouse button. If you can't do that for some reason, in the bottom right corner of the image, there's this virtual joystick. You can click on the joystick and do it that way if you prefer. You can do it however you prefer it, okay? So that's the first thing, okay? So chat, question in the chat window. Can you rotate the skull? Okay, looks like most folks are having success. Very good. All right, awesome. Please stop me if you're having a problem. Second thing, sometimes you don't want to rotate the skull. Sometimes you want to move the entire skull up or down, left or right. So on a typical mouse, you would click and hold the right mouse button. And if you do that, you can shift the entire skull left, right, up, down, however you want to do it. So try to use your right mouse button to move the skull around, okay? If that doesn't work for you for some reason, in the virtual joystick, you have the up, down, left, and right arrows. You can use those arrows to accomplish the same goal, okay? So in the chat window, can you move the entire skull around? Okay, good, good. All right, now, so, you know, these are simple things that once you master them, it's going to serve you well the entire semester, okay? So the last thing here that I want to show you is sometimes you want to magnify or demagnify something. So on my mouse, I have a scroll wheel. So by using my scroll wheel, I can enlarge or I can shrink the skull. So go ahead and enlarge and shrink the skull using your scroll wheel on your mouse. If you don't have a scroll wheel, then with the joystick in the bottom right corner, you have that slider, right? You have the slider minus to make it smaller and plus to make it bigger, okay? All right. Any questions so far? Okay. Now this seems all pretty straightforward and intuitive. I mean, I think it is, and you're going to get very comfortable with it over the next several weeks. You're going to be an expert at this software in 4 weeks. You're going to know how to use it, okay? And by knowing how to use it, you facilitate your learning. You get better, quicker at learning this content, okay? Now, the thing that makes learning anatomy somewhat challenging is the fact that, you know, let's say I have an image like this, okay? Let's say I have an image like this, and we're looking at the frontal bone. Well, that's the frontal bone. That frontal bone is still the frontal bone, even if I show you the skull this way. Do you see how the appearance from the side view looks different from the appearance from the front view? And it also looks different from the appearance from the top-down view, doesn't it? In other words, when you learn this anatomy, you don't want to learn the anatomy from only one viewing perspective. You want to rotate this skull around so that if I show you the frontal bone this way, you can tell me it's the frontal bone. If I show you the frontal bone this way, you can tell me it's the frontal bone. If I show you the frontal bone this way, you can tell me it's the frontal bone. So, in the chat window, forgive my rapid and sloppy typing here, but be sure to observe anatomy from different viewing perspectives, okay? One of the frustrating things for students is that you might say to yourself, well, I know what the frontal bone looks like, but you only ever studied it from the viewing perspective of looking at the patient this way. right? What if you're looking at a side perspective in an x-ray? You still got to know that's the frontal bone, right? What if you're looking at something like this? That's still the frontal bone. What if you're looking at this? And what if you're looking at this? That's still the frontal bone, isn't it? From the inside of the skull. My point here is that when you learn the anatomy, you've got to look at different viewing angles, different viewing perspectives, different rotations of the anatomy to make sure you really understand. And that's the challenging part. Okay. All right. Okay, I got a little ahead of myself there, but so go back and adjust your software so you have a nice image of the skull like this. Okay. Any questions or problems? Now, I'm going to ask you a question in the chat window where you're going to have to look at information on your word bank. Look at information on your word bank. Okay. Here we go. Hold on a sec. How many substructures are listed underneath the sphenoid bone? So find sphenoid bone on your word bank. Okay. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm starting to see 8. Let me highlight for you that you are basically right, but do you see that there are 3 additional terms to the right in the following, in the rightward column: foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum. Those are part of the sphenoid bone substructures as well. They just didn't print properly. Okay. So there are 11 substructures to the sphenoid bone that you have to be aware of. Now, when I refer to substructures, it's also the same thing as 11 landmarks. Okay, so substructures and landmarks are the same thing. A landmark or substructure is a piece of the bone. It is a region of the bone that you have to know. So let's do a little bit of this with the software, just so you start to get comfortable with things. Okay. So, all right, the sphenoid bone. All right. The sphenoid bone is going to be this crazy little bone right here. So let me go back, and I want you to do what I'm doing. So look at your skull. Now I want you to rotate the skull so the eyeballs are going to the right on your screen. And then where my cursor is, I want you to highlight it. Sphenoid. Okay. Now, a couple things. Do you notice when you highlighted sphenoid on your software, this selected structure window opened up, and there's a bunch of icons on it. The first icon looks like a textbook. It says definition. Open up the definition box. Open that up, and there's a whole bunch of information there we should be reading. Okay, so let me just read this for everybody's benefit. The sphenoid bone is the keystone bone at the base of the neurocranium, in front of the temporal bone and the basilar part of the occipital bone. The sphenoid articulates with 12 bones. Okay, it forms a joint with 12 bones: the vomer, the ethmoid, frontal, occipital, both parietal bones, both temporal bones, both zygomatic bones, both palatine bones. The sphenoid somewhat resembles a bat with its wings extended. Pay attention to that. When you're learning bones, think about the shape and try to figure out something in real life that resembles that bone. Does this look like a bat? Does it look like a butterfly? I'll show you that in just a moment. The sphenoid is divided into a medium body, 2 greater wings, 2 lesser wings that extend outward from the sides of the body, and 2 pterygoid processes that project inferiorly from where the great wings and body meet. The body contains 2 sphenoidal sinuses or air cells, right? A sinus is a passage for air that are separated from each other by a septum, a bony wall. Parts of the wings participate in the formation of the orbits, okay, the orbits, and contain several important foramina of the skull. A foramen is a hole. Foramen is a hole. The optic foramen, the foramen ovale, the foramen lacerum, and the foramen spinosum. The body has a deep depression, the sella turcica, that contains the pituitary gland. So my point, so here's what I'm telling you. When you highlight a structure, you should read about it. It doesn't mean you need to know everything about it, because you don't. But reading this stuff helps to connect the dots with other things that you are learning, okay? So read about it. Next, so click the textbook button again, and that will all go away. Now, what I would like you to do in the selected structures window, in the upper right side, there's this box that says isolate mode. Whatever structure you have highlighted blue, it will isolate it from the rest of the anatomy. So let's click it. 1, 2, 3, click. There you go. You can rotate this around. You can magnify it. So let me ask you in the chat window. From this viewing perspective, does this bone look like a bat or butterfly? Could you envision that in your mind? I mean, whatever it looks like to you, that's what you should be thinking about, okay? So here's the deal. If I show you a picture like this on the exam, you got to tell me that that's the sphenoid bone. But you don't know. Am I going to show it to you this way? Or am I going to show it to you that way? Or am I going to show it to you this way? Okay. You don't know which viewing perspective I'm going to challenge you with on the exam. So you really need to rotate this anatomy around and get comfortable with it. And that is a process that is painstaking and laborious and sometimes not too much fun, let's be honest. But it is a necessary requirement to learn the anatomy holistically, okay? All right, so let me ask in the chat window. Have you successfully isolated the sphenoid bone on your computer? Okay, any problems we should talk about in terms of technology right now? Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit more, and then I'm going to kind of turn you loose to do a little bit of work on your own, just so you can get comfortable with things, okay? So, go ahead with the bone you have on your screen and just put your cursor on the bone and click it so the bone turns blue. Turn the bone blue, okay? Now, if the bone turned blue, here's what I want you to do. In the selected structures window, I want you to go to the multicolored icon which says details. Click on that. 1, 2, 3, click. You should now have a multicolored sphenoid bone on your screen. You should have a rainbow colored sphenoid bone on your screen. Okay. And so my point is this. Let me ask you in the chat window. Let me ask you a question in the chat window. Is medial pterygoid process a listed landmark underneath sphenoid in your word bank? It takes a little bit to track this down, doesn't it? But obviously the answer is yes. Okay. What the computer is now telling you, it is currently color coding the landmarks for you. And there are even more landmarks than I'm asking you to learn. There are even more than I'm asking you to learn. But let's do this just a little bit. So, there's no reason you would know this, but let's take this pinkish tissue right now and click on it. Oh, that's the medial pterygoid process. It's sometimes called a medial pterygoid plate. Okay. So now you know where the medial pterygoid plate is. And you say to yourself, okay, I just highlighted this, but heck, I don't even know how to say the darn thing. So let's go up here into the selected structures window and hit the little icon for pronunciation. Go ahead and click that.
Medial pterygoid plates. Medial pterygoid plates.
Okay. So in the chat window, did your software pronounce the term for you? Did you hear your computer talk it, speak it to you? Okay, good. All right. Very, very good. Okay. So gang, you can walk yourself around this anatomy and find the different things you need to find. For example, one of the famous things on the sphenoid bone is the sella turcica. The sella turcica is this gray thing right here. That's the sella turcica. Okay, the sella turcica is the region of your skull that protects your pituitary gland. Pituitary gland will nestle in the sella turcica. Okay. All right. So there's more to learn, more to understand, more to do, but I think this is a good starting point for this first week. Okay. Before I turn this view off, do you have any questions? Okay, so now I'm going to go back and bring the skull up again. Please understand that you need to be able to identify this bone as the sphenoid bone of your skull. And I might show you an image like this all by itself, and you would say, oh, that's the sphenoid bone. I might show it to you like this, or I might show it to you like this. I might show it to you like that and ask you, I might do this kind of thing. I might have a picture that looks like this. And I might ask you, what is the name of the bone that I'm highlighting with the red arrow? I might do that. And you'd have to say, oh, well, you're showing me the sphenoid bone, which is part of the skull. Okay. I might do it this way. Right? Boy, doesn't that look a lot different from the bottom? Doesn't it look a lot different from the bottom? And so again, I might say, okay, what is that bone highlighted with the red arrow? I might do that. Okay. So again, my point is you really need to look at this anatomy as individual bones and as a bone that's part of a larger structure, right? This bone is part of the skull. So not only do you need to know the bone and the substructures of the bone, but you need to know how it integrates with the skull. And that's a process that's going to take study time, real effort to do this. Okay. Okay. Let me show you one more viewing perspective of the sphenoid bone. Okay. I'm going to take the parietal bone here and I'm going to hide it. And I'm going to look down into the skull. Okay. And so right here, you can see it. Right here is the sphenoid bone. Let me highlight it. Sphenoid bone, right? I might show you a picture on an exam like this. And after you're done cursing that I'm showing this to you, you're going to have to tell me what this is. Okay. This is the sphenoid bone. Okay. All right. Okay, gang. So as I said, there's lots to learn. There's lots we need to do, but I don't want to throw too much the first week. I simply want to get you started. Okay. So any questions so far about using the software? Okay. Then gang, what I'm going to do is go away from visible body at the moment and make some more comments about your word bank. Okay. So let me go back to WileyPlus and bring up the word bank again. Okay. I hope you can see the word bank okay, so let me just, forgive me, this is a very slow process. I really much would prefer to be in person with you, but let's do this. Can you see the word bank on my computer right now? Okay, thanks for the feedback. I do appreciate that because it lets me know, if I'm being successful in communicating to you, because I can't see your faces. I can't see. All right. So the word bank, this is going to become your best friend over the next 4 weeks. And so let me just make a couple comments. The visible body software that we just took a good tour of to get started is magnificent. I mean, it is. It's award-winning software that's even used in medical schools. So you're getting access to a very fine tool. But let's be honest, you can have the best tool in the world. If you don't put the study time in, you're still not going to succeed. So you need to put study time in. The visible body software is excellent. It's going to have most of the terms on your word bank, but not necessarily every term on the word bank. So as an example, the cranial sutures, the sutures are the joints between the bones of your skull. the cranial sutures don't really show up very well on the software. So for something like cranial sutures and cranial fontanelles, I'm going to recommend you rely on your textbook for that. For the cranial sutures and fontanelles, use the textbook. I'm not saying you can't use the software. I'm saying the software is not very good at those particular things. Okay. And so let's do this. Let's do this. Okay. First off, okay. Here, I'm going to ask you a question in the chat window. Do you have your textbook up on your computer now? If not, access it now. Bring your textbook up. And I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. Get your textbook accessible on your computer. Okay. Okay, so let's have a fun little race. We're going to do a fun little race as a group here together. I mean, I'm not going to be part of the race because I already know the answer. But let's do this. I'll type this into the chat window, and then I'm going to ask you to just go and do it, okay? So hold on a second. Okay, hold on a sec. Okay, so I'm about to send you a chat message. Read the chat message, try to do what it asks you to do, and we'll see who the first person it is that succeeds by putting the correct answer in the chat window. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. This is a friendly little race. It doesn't matter if you're in last place. Simply try to locate the fontanelle image in chapter 7. Okay, keep on going. Let's get a couple more answers because I want to see if you agree with each other. Let's get at least 2 more answers. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now we're getting it. All right, now you're knocking it down. Good, 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 good. Okay, so as you can see, if you're using the current edition of the textbook, that is your digital textbook, then it should be figure 714. Figure 7.14 contains the fontanelles at birth. Okay, so using your word bank, there are 4 fontanelles you need to know. There are the anterior fontanelle. Well, you can see that in figure 714, can't you? There is the posterior fontanelle, which you can see. There is the anterolateral fontanelle, which you can see, and the posterolateral fontanelle. Okay, those fontanelles are not really shown properly in the visible body software. The fontanelles are the soft spots in the infant skull that a child is born with. And slowly after a child is born, those soft spots will ossify into proper bone tissue and lock the bones together into what are the sutures. So the fontanelles of the infant skull at birth will harden into bony tissue as the child matures. Okay, and that's what you're seeing in figure 714 there. Okay, now since you've accessed figure 714 in your book, you already now know that chapter 7 is a good chapter to get support on anatomy. So let me ask you in the chat window, here we go. Which figure numbers in chapter 7 show cranial sutures? Which figure numbers in chapter 7 show cranial sutures? Okay. There's going to be multiple correct answers here. Multiple correct answers. Okay, let's just get a couple answers here. Just a friendly little race. There's you don't have to worry about being fastest here. Okay, do we have any responses? Okay, so I'm seeing Ashasha put 7.6, Brendan 7.3, 7.5, 7.4. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Okay, I would agree with all of that. Very good. So here's my point, folks. I'll type it and I'll say, excuse me. When visible body seems to be inadequate for the anatomy you're being asked to learn, you go to your textbook. That's where you go. If visible body isn't cutting the mustard, go to the textbook. If the textbook seems unclear, go to the visible body. In other words, go back and forth between visible body and the textbook to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, okay? Oh, wish I had a typist here. Not a question. Use visible body and the textbook to support each other, period, not question mark. Okay. And so that's what I'm trying to highlight for you, is that there will be times when that textbook is really going to be helpful and I want you to use it. Okay. All right. Take a look at the temporal bone portion of your word bank. Here we have the temporomandibular joint. Okay, you have a joint. Now, folks, a joint is any area of your anatomy where bones come together, or in some cases, bones and ligaments, or bones and cartilage. It depends on the context. But as a starting point, a joint is going to be anywhere where bones come together. So let me ask this in the chat window. What two bones do you expect to be part of the temporomandibular joint? Okay, good. So we have some answers here. Anybody else want to contribute? Okay, yeah, the temporal bone and the mandible. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that in the software. Let me go to visible body at this time, and I'll reset things here. Okay, so first off, if we're going to know the joint, we got to know the bones that come together, right? So here's the temporal bone. I want to let you stare at it. Here's the mandible. Let you stare at that. So the temporomandibular joint is where these two bones come together. I can use multi-select in the software and get them both highlighted blue at the same time. Now, I don't really see the joint here because there are ligaments in my way. Okay, these bands of white tissue here are ligaments. And while ligaments are very important, I am not going to ask you to know the identity of the ligaments for your lab exams. You will not be asked about ligaments. And here's another talking point. If a piece of anatomy is not listed on your word bank, I promise you I will not test you on it. If it's not on the word bank, you will not be tested, okay? So what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to select these ligaments and I'm going to ask the software to get rid of it. So this is the lateral ligament, and I'm going to go up here and ask the software to hide it. This here is the joint capsule. You'll learn about joint capsules later in the course. I don't want that right now. It's in my way. So I'm going to hide it. Now I can show you the temporomandibular joint. So I have this and this highlighted, the temporal bone and the mandible bone. The joint is where they come together. So right here, okay, right here. This is where they interface. This is where your lower jaw moves up and down as you chew your food or open and shut your mouth for speaking purposes, okay? This is the temporomandibular joint, okay? A joint is where two bones come together. So the software is not going to be able to highlight the joint for you, because to highlight the joint, you have to have two things interacting, and you have to appreciate that when you're talking about joints. By the way, let me ask this question in the software, in the chat window, okay? Are cranial sutures joints? Are they joints? Okay, so Jared has answered. How about the rest of you? Right? 50-50 chance here. Okay. All right. So we're starting to get the responses, and I appreciate that. I want all of you to respond, okay? This is a friendly place to have a conversation, and it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong as long as we're learning. And so the answer is yes. Sutures are a type of joint. They are a type of joint, okay? All right. So any questions? All right. Okay. So gang, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do is assign each of you a section of the word bank. I'm going to assign each of you a section of the word bank. And from that assignment, we're going to go into a 20-minute study hall session where you focus on your assigned section of the word bank. And then when we come back, we will go into a breakout section where you get together with your classmates and you teach your assigned section. Now, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay. But let's be honest, we have got to start somewhere. We've got to start somewhere, okay? So I'm going to go through the word bank and I'm going to assign different bones to different people. And so please write this down. As I state your name, I'm going to tell you what section of the word bank I want you to focus on for the next 20 minutes. Please, please type into the chat window, got it or don't got it, if you didn't hear me. I need to know that you heard what I'm saying, okay? So if you hear me correctly, just type into the chat window, got it, or something that lets me know you understand, okay? All right, Jack Kiefer. Jack Kiefer, Jack, please do the temporal bone and all the substructures. Thanks, Jack. Okay. Cassandra, please do the sphenoid bone and all substructures. Thank you. Jared Schaefer. Jared, please do the ethmoid bone. Please do the ethmoid bone. Thanks, Jared. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Brittany, please do the mandible bone. Please do the mandible bone. Thanks, Brittany. Okay. Alana Sterner. Alana, I want you to do the thoracic section of vertebra. The thoracic section of vertebra. Great, thanks, Alana. Okay. Asacia, I'm going to give you a hard one, and I know it's a hard one, but it's okay to not be perfect today, okay? So don't be scared. Asacia, I'm going to ask you to do the pelvic girdle. Asacia, the pelvic girdle. Okay, thanks, Asacia. Let's see. Ray Ober. Ray, I'm also going to assign you the pelvic girdle because this is a hard one and I want 2 students focusing on it. So please do the pelvic girdle, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Let's continue here. Naomi Myers. Naomi Myers, please do the scapula. Please do scapula. Thanks, Naomi. Let's see here. Okay. Brendan Carver. Brendan, please do the humerus. Okay, thanks, Brendan. Brendan, there's nothing humorous about the humorous, okay? Little teacher humor there, okay? All right. Let's continue. Okay. Julian. Julian, please do the ulna and the radius. The ulna and the radius. Thanks, Julian. And then Lauren Umble. Lauren, please do the tibia and the fibula. The tibia and the fibula. Okay, great. Everybody, I think, has something assigned. So we're going to do a 20-minute private study session. Your goal is to use visible body to get as comfortable as you can be with your assigned anatomy. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay. Do the best you can. 20 minutes. When we come back, one breakout room session where you attempt to explain the part that you've been assigned. And it's okay not to be perfect. Okay? So during this private study time, I'm going to be online, but I am going to turn my video and audio off, but you can reach me by chat. So if you need help with something, send me a chat message and I will respond, okay? Do you have any questions? Okay, folks, I'll wake us all back up about 11:21. Go ahead, study your anatomy, and I'll see you in 20 minutes.